Today's video is brought to you by Marvel Snap, but more on that in a moment. As many of you know, if you're watching this video, I'm a massive nerd. Not only do I love Magic the Gathering and make content about it, obviously, but I'm also a big Warhammer dork too. My love of 40k was on a back burner for years and years, tied over by engaging with the hobby from afar, usually through things like video games. And as some of you have may noticed, when it comes to Warhammer, there's a lot of video games. We've got a Skulls event coming up, which is like a returning event where Games Workshop show off all the companies that are working on Games Workshop intellectual property. There's at least 6 different games getting shown off for this thing in June. It's madness. Most 20 to 30 something computer nerds as well will have some sort of positive affinity if they have liked the Warhammer property with Dawn of War. Many people speak of fondness of the original Dawn of War and Dawn of War 2, which for the record is my preferred one in the series, and the less we talk about Dawn of War 3, the better. I believe that Dawn of War was integral in growing the brand identity of Warhammer in the mainstream, and whilst on that topic, we can't ignore Space Marine as well, a 360 and PS3 smash hit that served to again capture the imaginations of new fans, but also keep Warhammer 40k popular and relevant in the nerd and mainstream spaces. For years, video games were cribbing off of the Super Soldier Space Marine shit that Warhammer was doing, you know, in the 80s. It was cool to see Space Marine come back and sort of like take, not the crown as such. I mean, it wasn't exactly competing with Gears of War for best action game on the Xbox, was it? But it was pretty fucking good. Space Marine has a sequel coming very soon. Less orcs this time, more nids. I'm very excited. It's better late than never. Well, I will undoubtedly cover this game on the channel. I'm very excited for it. Last month I made a video about how much I was enjoying Total War 3, and Warhammer 40k Chaos Gate just launched, but I haven't had a chance to play it yet with being ill and being on holiday. And those are only just some of the Warhammer games that have launched in the last few months. I'd hasten to add Hired Gun to a list of ones that I think was really good. Whilst most people say it wasn't great, I actually fucking loved it. It was far from perfect, but it was a wonderful visual rendition of Necromunda and what a hive world within the Imperium would look like. I felt like I was there, engaging with these worlds that I've read about and seen in art. And the game itself did a good Doom impression as well, with some frantic Titanfall 2-esque movement and combat. Not perfect, but very enjoyable. And going back to it, like I said, Magic the Gathering is a big part of my hobby diet as well. But I can't tell you, aside from like Magic the Gathering Online and Arena, digital ways to play Magic, I can't tell you the last time I played a Magic the Gathering video game. It's fucking weird. Arena is arguably a Magic the Gathering video game, as it doesn't have the trading element of the real card games, thus not being a true emulation. And now with alchemy and digital errata and randomization, there is an argument that it is a video game version of Magic. But ultimately, it is trying to be the card game that you play on the tabletop. You see, whilst Warhammer and Games Workshop that make Warhammer will license their IP to any motherfucker, they won't create a digital version of their tabletop wargame. Magic has both Magic the Gathering Online and Magic Arena, which give you the ability to play the card game digitally in events and tournaments and ladders, something like I said Games Workshop appears to be absolutely at odds with and not wanting to do. They don't seem even remotely interested in doing it, which is weird really, because there's so many genres and alternate versions explored via Warhammer video games, from action hack and slashes to base building RPGs, but there's just no way to actually play Warhammer 40k or Age of Sigmar on a digital client in an official capacity. We do have, of course, fan-made projects, part of Tabletop Simulator on Steam, which allow you to play the game, and a lot of competitive players like myself do play on there, but it's not officially licensed. It's essentially cockatrice, but for Warhammer. And what's even weirder is that Games Workshop will allow Talisman or Warhammer Quest to have a real close approximation with a turn-based video game version of it, but not the large-scale war games. It's just an interesting sticking point, something they don't want to get involved. So you can play Magic Online in a digital version of the card game, but there's no like accessible, like interesting action RPG or something to like onboard the mainstream into the game. It just doesn't exist. And I really think that's a shame. That's the topic of today's video. Before we get into it though, a quick message from our sponsor. Marvel has teamed up with Nuverse and Second Diner to produce Marvel Snap, a new super fast-paced digital card game featuring all of your favorite characters from the Marvel universe. It's going to be a competitive collectible card game featuring over 150 cards at launch, with fan favorites like Doctor Strange and Captain America, but with added cool variants and alternate art versions for you to collect. The game has a unique board control gameplay element where over the course of a quick-fire 6-turn game, you have to battle for control over randomized locations games from Marvel's universe. With 50 plus locations, every single match plays out differently. There is a focus on competitive play with the ability to double down on your strategy and choose to snap, upping the ante and receiving more progress towards your rank in the form of cosmic cubes. With the promise of regular weekly and monthly updates and a closed beta coming to Android, I'm excited to see how this card game develops. If you want to check it out, there'll be a link in the description below for you to sign up for more information and the beta. Thank you to Marvel Snap for sponsoring this video. Now I know what some of you are going to be saying. Wizards of the Coast are more selective about cross-promoting and utilising their brand outside of their main game space, where Games Workshop will throw it at anyone and see how it sticks. And to that I say, bullshit. Puzzle Quest MTG, anyone? A Fortnite collaboration via Secret Lair, and the recently canned and terribly received MTG Legends, one of the few video games of Magic. I don't think they're that protective. I don't doubt there are people at Wizards of the Coast who want to be a bit precious and a bit careful about losing money. I don't think it's about a respect for the brand, if anything, before someone says that in the comment section. I think it's we don't want to lose money, because Legends probably cost them a lot of fucking money. And the other interesting thing about all this is that Wizards of the Coast do have another intellectual property that crosses over into the video game space a lot more regularly than Magic, although less so recently, and that's Dungeons and Dragons. Now, to be honest, up front, when I was looking at it, it looks like D&D has less tie-ins than it used to. It's regularity with which we got something based in the Forgotten Realms is it's sporadic now. It's getting less and less. But that said, we had two recent tie-ins, two huge tie-ins. In recent times, we had Baldur's Gate 3 launch into early access with quite a bit of acclaim, but we also had Dark Alliance released to quite a poor reaction from critics. Both of these franchises are super interesting to me because both of them come from the Baldur's Gate line of products, with the mainline series being a Western CRPG series that was very successful, and Dark Alliance being the action hack and slash on consoles that were also, for all intents and purposes, very successful. They're classics for the normie crowd. Both of these titles were successful enough to allow Dungeons & Dragons to transcend beyond its normal nerd trappings. People that weren't going to roll dice in someone's basement may still pick up one of these titles, especially when you look at how well reviewed things like Baldur's Gate 2 were. It's kind of hard to explain how popular, how top 10 list of RPGs that game was for the longest time. And there's no doubt in my mind that this is what has led to Baldur's Gate being a setting that is popularized by these games. We now have a Magic the Gathering set returning to the Forgotten Realms to give us deep cuts of a 20-year-old PC RPG that old nerds love and feel nostalgic and excited for. And the thing is, I don't think that going back and making reference to a 20-year-old computer RPG like Baldur's Gate 2 Shadows of Arm is going to sell more units. If anything, it's kind of like a byproduct, a small offshoot, a side thing that like developers and designers are doing now. They're paying homage to things that got them into these games and kept them engaged all those years ago. And that's kind of wild, and I kind of love it. Seeing these love letters in modern Magic to an old computer RPG, the modern designers and of course the modern players were affected so profoundly by those PC games that we now have a John Arenicus card in Magic. It's wild. So what's the other side of it? What deep magical cuts could we get in a new Magic game, or we could get in a new source book for D&D that takes a deep cut into Magic? Well, from the video games, there's next to nothing. And that's not to say we couldn't have that, by the way. We could have a Brothers War tie-in in D&D, where we have like a Dominaria source book from the history of Dominaria and stuff like that. That could still happen, but it's all drawing from the card game because there isn't really any other material. Don't forget there's meant to be a TV show coming up. Because they botched the gaming side of things so badly, I have no faith that the Magic TV show will be any good or if it'll ever materialize. There really aren't that many games. If we include the MTG digital encyclopedia released in 1999, as well as all Duels of the Planeswalkers games, Arena, and Magic the Gathering Online, we have literally 18 Magic video games. I'm using the word video game very loosely here. Like Duels of the Planeswalkers, Arena, and Modo are all just digital versions of playing Magic the Gathering. It's not a exploration of the setting via a different genre. It is literally trying to port the card game to digital. If we decide to separate it out, removing the attempts to be Magic the Gathering, and I'm going to remove Chandelar for that as well, then we don't have very many. There's Battle Mage, Armageddon, Battlegrounds, Tactics, Puzzle Quest, and the ill-fated Magic Legends. That's right, in the illustrious career, 30 years of being the greatest, the oldest, the greatest, the best card game in the history of hobby gaming, we have 6 video games. They pretty much all suck as well. And of course I am cutting Chandelier out of that 6 because it is a game where you simply play Magic the Gathering as the combat system. Chandelier does come the closest out of all the ones that are trying to be a digitized version of Magic, to having gameplay elements that make it its own video game. There is a storyline, there are RPG elements of growing your stats like your health and such. The anti-system really works as well to make like a progressive system where you unlock more stuff for your decks. I think Chandelier is very good, and I'd love to do a video where I play through it on the channel. But I'm just saying it's not really an alternative take on Magic. It's an attempt to be Magic in the digital space. Warhammer, by comparison, I tried to look up. And it's the point that I can't actually, without spending a fucking long time on it, collate how many Warhammer games there actually are. Warhammer, by comparison, or at least the game systems from Games Workshop, have 122 titles, according to Wikipedia. If we cut some of them for things like Talisman, which aren't strictly speaking Warhammer, and then we cut some more because they're expansion packs, for example, and maybe a few more because they're literal renditions of board games, then we're probably erring on the side of around 80, maybe 90. It's kind of mad. Now, I'm not saying Magic needs video games to succeed. Fuck, Magic is making more money than Warhammer does anyway. It turns out selling collectible and artificially scarce cardboard that has a very low margin in terms of how much it costs to produce it is a pretty fucking lucrative business model. What I am saying is this. I think it's a fucking waste. It is a crying shame that the intellectual property of Magic itself is so underutilized when compared to similar properties in the hobby space, whether that be the same parent company owning D&D, or whether it be, like, I guess one of the biggest competitors in a way, but it's not really a competitor, with Warhammer. It's just a massive missed opportunity. Making video games isn't easy, and this is why Games Workshop doesn't do any of this in-house, by the way. They get external talent to create their Space Fleet battle games and their Left 4 Dead-inspired cooperative rat-killing FPS games. That's what I mean. There's so much variety in the Warhammer space, it's insane. Meanwhile, Wizards hadn't made a venture into this space in recent time, and they absolutely fucked it. They dropped the proverbial ball. Firstly, we had Cryptic Studios and Perfect World brought on board, and whilst I'm not going to sit here and say there aren't any talented or passionate individuals at those studios, having people primarily doing MMO games and things that are basically monetization trees disguised as intellectual properties, yeah, that wasn't the best. Perhaps the game was meant to be an MMO in early stages as well, because it was announced as one. Yep, they claimed this was going to be an MMO, and people got excited, although most people were skeptical that that would ever happen, and then it wasn't. It was a huge backlash when it finally got revealed that it's actually an instance-based action RPG. Was this ever meant to be an MMO? I guess we'll never know. Maybe the investment was cut during development. Maybe one day someone will reach out to me and spill the tea, but for now we can only guess. They sent out game previews to creators like myself. I did a video on it, and I had to try and be as diplomatic as possible, saying it looked unfinished and unpolished. Then we got access to the early beta, and again, it did not look good. And I had to really just bite my tongue and not shit on people who were working on this thing, but it wasn't good. The chief problem of this subpar action RPG was that it was being aimed at being an ongoing game service as opposed to an actual engagement with the intellectual property that was worthwhile of its own merits. It was trying to incentivize repeat play and then to monetize the people that got into the game. I guess most service and most free-to-play games are like that, but when you look at MOBAs like League and stuff, there are ways to do it that isn't incredibly predatory or shit, I guess by firstly making your game not shit. This was a very Wizards of the Coast adjacent move to focus on the monetization and it being a service rather than being its own product. Instead of an independent action RPG, a standalone game where you buy in and get your money's worth for the price of admission alone, akin to perhaps the action RPGs of old like Dark Alliance or the standalone experiences like Chaos Gate in recent years, or Hired Gun or whatever, we got a system that was looking to gobble up our money instead. The monetization was seen as very predatory, but pretty much everyone who was covering it, whether it be Magic creators or the free-to-play like MMO action RPG creators, everyone thought it looked very... On top of that, we had very loose connections to MTG as a universe, so it wasn't really ticking that box, the box I'm asking for with this video. A few named characters as quest givers, the iconic spells, but none of them having the iconic artwork. Instead, I remember saying that it seemed like a contract had gone bad somewhere. They weren't allowed the art to Healing Salve or to Lightning Bolt or anything, instead having these generic art assets that just didn't feel like Magic. It was a hot fucking mess. It wasn't all bad though. Some of the environmental design for the Innistrad areas were pretty cool, and some of the creatures looked like the creatures you'd expect, Zendikari goblins and things like that. Is that a minimum bar? What I'm saying is some of the assets for the 3D renders were decent enough. The game died before it lived, closing down in beta. I hate to think just how much fucking money was wasted in this thing. Like how much money went into this project to have it go up in flames and collapse before it even went live. I just wish Wizards and their partners in this endeavor had focused on getting a finished product that was its own separate thing that deserved to exist. An engagement with a rich IP like Magic as the focus, perhaps, more so than some monetization model that passes as a game. There is so much potential for the IP of Magic the fucking Gathering. There is so much there. Iconic villains like the Phyrexians and the Eldrazi, the fucking characters that they've built up over the last 10, 15, 20 years with the Planeswalkers, things that we all resonate with. 30 years of history, game pieces, iconography, and references. Imagine a good RTS where you battle Mirrans versus Phyrexians, or a turn-based strategy game where you command the Zendikari allies versus the Eldrazi during the invasion. A murder mystery visual novel on Capenna or Ravnica, a fighting game involving the Planeswalkers. Imagine a Smash clone with Planeswalking changing the map as you play. A computer RPG like Baldur's Gate or KOTOR. An action RPG Diablo clone that wasn't just a Skinner box looking to consume your money. Worst case scenario, how about a rogue-like solo part to Arena akin to the Legends of Runeterra solo experience, where we get to see characters, have them voice some lines, some comic book stuff, even the bare minimum, right? Jewels of the Planeswalkers had all this stuff quite a while back, where it was just a simplified version of Magic, but you did fight Nicol Bolas as the Gatewatch and stuff, and it had some cool story moments. And Arena touched upon this most recently. We talked about this in an episode of Dice Tower Removal that might not even be out yet. But we had that the battle between Elspeth and Ashiok, and each of them had power in their decks. I think Ashiok had a Soul Ring, and Elspeth had a Pearl. And you had these powerful spells, you had these powerful Planeswalkers clashing, and you have a story moment within the game of Arena. And I just think it's a cool way to expand things beyond just trying to rinse our fucking wallets by changing our cards and not giving us wild cards back. There's just so much fucking wasted potential. This is a 30-year-old game with so much heritage. It is one of, if not the biggest game in the hobby space. It is up there with Warhammer, but I feel like Wizards of the Coast have mismanaged the IP for God knows how long. And I think it will continue. I doubt this will change, but it's just something I've been meditating on a little bit as I've been getting back into Warhammer games and just wishing we had something good for Magic. I'm going to say, I was about to say all I want is a Knights of the Old Republic style RPG, which is crazy because that game was like a fucking masterpiece, right? But something like that with Planeswalkers on Ravnica, a boy can dream. So I want to know what you think. Am I just barking up the wrong tree? Am I longing for something that's kind of impossible to really have? Or do you think that actually, given the right amount of management and the right investment of funds, they could expand their digital portfolio and expand the fucking player base and the fans of the game by engaging in video games that aren't complete dog shit? Let me know in the comment section below. I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi. Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you to Marvel Snap for sponsoring a video on this channel. Looking forward to the game coming out soon so we can get some games on it. See you soon. Ta-ta for now.